So again, welcome to everybody that is joining us. This is our third session, I believe, for the week that is just for WKU students. So we're really glad to see you here. And we're going to be talking about the exchange options that you have while you're a student at WKU. So my name is Katie Bush. So I work in the Office of Study Abroad and Global Learning. I advise on the Oceania regions, which is Australia, New Zealand, and Fiji, as well as our domestic programs, which includes National Student Exchange, which we'll talk a little bit more about in this session. And so I'll let Catherine introduce herself as well.
Hi everyone, I'm Catherine Hale. I am a study abroad advisor, so I work closely with Katie, and I advise on the regions of Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, and a couple other countries, including Spain and Morocco, and Northern African countries. Hope I haven't missed a region. So the outbound exchange students who go on programs in those regions, and also work with all of our incoming students that come from partner universities. So we are glad you joined us. Exchanges are a really cool way to study abroad or study away. So we're going to share a little bit about the specific opportunities we have.
Yes, and
go ahead.
I would say we're hoping to have a couple of student alums join us, but it seems like maybe they've had something come up where they just couldn't make it. So fingers crossed that you'll get to hear from them as well. All right.
So what is an exchange? It's basically an affordable way to study abroad or study away in the US or North America. And it requires you to directly enroll at the university that you're going to, which is a partner university or part of the consortium National Student Exchange, which we'll talk about in more detail in a little bit. The length of the program is usually a whole semester or academic year, but there are a few summer options, and those will be indicated when you look at the programs in our catalog or on the NSE website. You, as an exchange student, you would take regular courses at the university with local students. Some of the partners have special courses just for exchange students, but generally it's a pretty immersive program because you get to take classes with other students, and it's not just a program exclusively for Americans or for international students. All of the credit transfers back to WKU. You have to get it pre-approved, just like any other study abroad course that you might take through a program provider, which you saw on the schedule. We have lots of sessions with our partner program providers. But exchanges are very unique because you actually directly get admitted to the university and enroll in their regular classes. So that's why it has a lot of potential to be very immersive, whether you're in an international country or in the US, you know, being immersed in the city that you are studying in and kind of blending in with the local students, having that experience, like living like a local in that location.
And I will say my cat has decided to lock herself in my room with me. So if you hear her meowing, I apologize. She does this where she wants in and out. So no one is the best option for her. Okay, so moving on to the types of exchanges that we have. So Catherine and I have kind of mentioned them in that a little bit since we've started, but we have National Student Exchange, and I'll show a promo video for that in just a moment. But National Student Exchange is a consortium of about 170 universities across the United States, Canada, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the US Virgin Islands. So you can request to be placed at one of those universities for either a semester or a full year. And then I'll show that video real quick. so then in addition to national student exchange, we of course have our international exchange partners all over the world. And kind of the difference between those and national student exchange is that where with NSC, we are working with the company, the provider NSC. With our international exchange partners, WKU actually has a partnership directly with that university. And right now we have 16 partners that we work with located on 3 different continents that you can go to for same a semester or an academic year. And then like Catherine said, some of them have summer options. So for NSC, I mentioned there are 170 different campuses who are part of it. So there is no shortage of options for you to choose. So these maps just kind of give a breakdown of it. And the map that you see on the right-hand side, that actually comes from the NSC website. So if you go to nsc.org, you can search a map view or a list view of all of the campuses that are available. And it can be a little overwhelming because there are so many. So you just really want to think about what is most important to you. Of course, do they have your major, but also do you want to study at a smaller university, a bigger university than WKU? Do you want to try a private school? Do you want to be by the ocean, in the mountains, a big city, smaller? Really, they have it all. So I almost guarantee you I can help you find something for that.
So these are the locations where we have direct partnerships with international universities. The most are located in Europe. We've got 2 that are fairly new in the United Kingdom. Both are in England. One is the University of Lincoln, and the other is University of East Anglia. And they're both large universities similar to WKU, if not larger, with lots of different academic options. Especially the University of East Anglia has a ton of choices and works for all kinds of majors, probably most majors at WKU, as long as you can get approval from your department to transfer the credit back. University of Lincoln is a little bit more limited. In France, we have 2 that are both located in the south of France. One is in the city of Lyon and one is close to Lyon. They both offer business courses and one of them has some humanities as well, and both offer French language. We have one in the Netherlands that has a few different academic areas offered. In Germany, one is particularly for business and the other has a variety as well. And then our partner in Denmark is especially for journalism and broadcasting majors. We've had a lot of journalism majors study there, and we host a lot of students from Denmark, usually 2 to 3 each year, which is pretty active for an exchange. And so we send about the same number to Denmark. We have 3 planning to come here next semester, for instance, if everything works out with COVID. In Asia, we have 2 longstanding partners in Seoul, South Korea. One of them has a wide range of courses offered, and you can take up to 6 credit hours of language if you want to study Korean language, and they also have a summer program. And then the other one in Korea is good for business, and they have some science courses. Japan, we have 1 there right now and possibly another one that we're about to sign a partnership with. The one this is our longest standing partner, Kansai Gaidai University in Osaka. And we've been partnered with them since 1984, I believe. So that one's really old. They've been doing exchanges for a long time. And they have a whole Asian studies program that's designed for international exchange students with Asian culture courses, as well as Japanese language and business courses, and they have a few other subjects like art. The one in Taiwan is good if you want to study Mandarin. They also offer political science credit, some business credit, and a few other subjects in English. In Latin America, we have a partner in Ecuador that offers also a variety of courses taught in English, as well as Spanish language. And then Mexico, we are partnered with a whole network of campuses that are a part of Tec de Monterrey. And they have Spanish language, business, and then it just varies by campus. And then the final one is in Turkey, Istanbul, Turkey. We haven't been sending students there for the past few years because of the political situation, but we've actually sent them more students than they've sent us. So it's been a popular program in the past, and we hope that things will improve in the near future so that students can go there again. So this is kind of a breakdown of considerations to think of with exchanges and kind of who exchanges are the right fit for. The benefits of an exchange are, number one, that it's really affordable because you either would be able to pay WKU tuition, and that's the case with all of the international exchange partners, or in-state tuition, which is an option with the National Student Exchange. There's two different plans with the student exchange. I think Katie might talk a little bit more about that later. But you can either pay WKU distance learning tuition or the in-state tuition at the partner you're going to. So there's no big program fee that you have to pay. You're just paying tuition, you know, housing, meals, your travel expenses, and any other living expenses. So it can be very similar to the cost of being at WKU. And that's probably the number one benefit of going on an exchange. Another cool thing is that you get to meet students from all over the world, or possibly all over the country, or in the specific location if you're studying through NSE. And so it's kind of different than a lot of other study abroad programs where you might just be with a bunch of American students. You actually will be in kind of a diverse population depending on the school that you're going to. So we already mentioned this, but it's immersive. You're an international student at the university, or you know, a student as if you're studying like for a degree at whatever school you're going to in North America or abroad. So that's a pretty cool experience, but it does require a high level of independence and autonomy. So it's really good for students who have maybe traveled before and feel really comfortable with that. You're comfortable like being proactive and seeking out help and support when you need it, because they don't always do a lot of hand holding. There may not be someone checking in with you constantly, so you kind of have to seek out that support when you need it. But that varies a little bit by school that you might choose. And then exchanges are a great way to diversify your resume, get good experience. You know, when you go to apply for jobs after you graduate and say, I did a whole semester exchange at the university and lived on my own and really lived like a local. I met all kinds of students, got to interact with people from all over the world. It's a good resume builder. A few considerations are that it's not quite as structured as some of the other programs that have like an inclusive program fee. So there won't be as many activities and excursions that are included. You kind of have to plan that stuff on your own, get together with other exchange students that are wanting to do travel or wanting to explore the culture and kind of get out and do those things on your own. You may have some, you know, recommendations that you get from the staff at the university, but you're a little bit more on your own with that. Another consideration is that you could be the only student. You're most likely going to be the only WKU student going on the program, and that's why we say it's good for students that are a little more independent. So it's not like Carlton College where there's usually quite a few students each semester from WKU there that you have like a cohort of people you can plan with. Occasionally, especially with international exchanges, occasionally you'll be able to go with a couple of another student or two, but a lot of the time students are going kind of on their own. And then another thing is, because exchanges mean that we're sending students to the schools as well as hosting, that we have to look at the exchange balance to determine if you're going to be able to get placed. And so that can be a drawback sometimes. Students want to go to a particular location, but we can't place you there because we're out of balance or there's not enough spaces available at that school. So you might have to be flexible in that way. I don't know if there's anything you want to add, Katie.
Yeah, so just touching on the chance of placement with NSE, it's similar, but instead of like one-to-one relationships with the schools, it's just all of the NSE schools in general. But if you go to the website, which again, nsc.org is the best place to start, every single campus that's part of NSE has their own page, and it will list what the chance of placement is at that university. And when you apply for NSE, you can put up to 5 different choices. So I always recommend when you look at them that you have a backup option that has like a very good or excellent chance of placement, and that you're willing to go to that one, so that when we enter you in the system, if you don't get your first choice, we know you're okay with maybe your second or your third. But almost all of the students I've worked with have gotten their first choice, and those that didn't got their second. So for the most part, if you're flexible, you'll probably end up somewhere that you want to go for sure. Okay, so when Catherine and I were putting this together, we were like, oh, what are the eligibility requirement differences between our international and our NSC exchanges? But actually, they're pretty much the same. So to apply, you should be a full-time degree-seeking student. For NSC does require a 2.5 GPA. Some schools have a higher requirement. And then for international exchanges, we require that you have a 2.75. And this applies when you apply, but then also the semester before you go. So you want to maintain that GPA. You should have one term at WKU. Actually, you're required to have one term at WKU completed prior to applying. And then you should complete one full year or 24 hours before actually going on your exchange. Something else that's different with our exchanges is that because they are a little bit more independent, and sometimes they can be a little bit trickier with just how the application process works and the placement works, we do require that you meet with an advisor before your application is approved. And I would say you even want to meet with us before you start submitting your application. That way we can make sure that you're aware of any kind of just little weird quirks that some of the exchanges might have. And then just keeping in mind that some of our partners do have other specific requirements. For example, for NSC, it's all English speaking, except for Puerto Rico, you have to have a proficient level of Spanish. And then in Quebec in Canada, you should know French. For most of the schools, they do require a proficiency test for that. Catherine, do you have any other examples for like specific requirements?
Yeah, Kansai Gaidai, the partner I mentioned in Japan, does require a higher GPA. I think it's 3.0. And I know our partner in Ecuador prefers that students have at least 2 semesters of Spanish completed before they go, because they feel that that is important for students to be able to navigate the culture. Just having at least a basic level of Spanish, because not that many people speak English fluently in Ecuador. But those are just 2 examples I can think of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and then I would just like to add, and this is for any of our study abroad or study away programs, you shouldn't have anything on your conduct record that prohibits you from doing one of these experiences. So that is something we check when you submit. And then also for NSE, for Canadian exchanges specifically, you want to be thinking about what a background check would show, because the Canadian customs can be really picky about certain things that might be minor here, but that could pop up on a background check. And I'm sure that's similar for a lot of the other international locations as well. So it doesn't look like either of our students were able to join. So unfortunately, I'm sorry about that. But we were hoping we would have Sophie Hayes join us, and she studied at the University of Lincoln, I believe last fall. So these are just some pictures that she shared with us from the town that she was in with that. So if you just want to glance at them quickly. And then these are pictures from our other student, Emily Wright, who went through National Student Exchange last fall through at the University of Hawaii Hilo. So that's on the Big Island, or the island of Hawaii. And she was a geology student and actually was able to use FUSE grant to conduct research on volcanoes while she was there, because they have somewhat recently erupted at this point, but fairly recently when she was there. And so Hilo is a great option if you're kind of looking for more of a rural Hawaiian experience and to really meet the locals. The other option is in Honolulu. And I will just point out, Hawaii is the most popular choice, but it is one of the trickier ones to get placed into. So if you want to go to Hawaii, have a backup, and I recommend the Virgin Islands as your backup.
Yeah, there's some really cool US territories that you also check out. I would love to go to Puerto Rico, for instance.
Yes, and Puerto Rico is awesome if you are wanting to learn Spanish, and it's very affordable. Just like the US Virgin Islands is an incredibly affordable option, especially if you're looking at paying in-state tuition for those schools. And federal aid still applies. So if you qualify for federal aid, you can still use them for most NSC options.
So to look up more specific details about your program, you can go to our website, wku.edu/studyabroad, and click on Explore Programs, which you see over on the left. Each of our international partners has a special page of its own where you can look up info. And then for NSE, how does that work, Katie?
So there's one page for NSE, and it's going to link you to the NSE website in order to look at all of the different options. And then when you submit your application, you can just choose which ones you are interested in. But we'll hopefully have met by then, so I'll look over those pages with you as well.
Yeah, so you all, for all of the programs, you have to apply and get accepted through WKU first. And then once we approve you, and for international exchanges, I have to nominate you to the partner, then you can proceed with their application process.
Yep, and then just a reminder on the right of who we are, plus our colleague Krista, who advises for the Europe region for those exchanges. So please, we want to meet with you. So definitely, even if you're just slightly interested, you can go to our website and schedule an advising appointment. All via Zoom right now, so that's okay. Eventually, we'll see you in person.
We would love to send more on exchanges. I think
Yes.
sometimes it scares students away, but it is a really cool experience. You do have to get out of the comfort zone a little bit, but it's totally worth it, especially for the lower cost.
Yeah, I have a lot of students who, when I meet with them about NSE, they have referred to it in the past as WKU's best kept secret. We don't want them to be a secret, so definitely spread the news that these are options for your friends as well. So yeah, once you've met with us and you have gone to our website, on those pages that Catherine mentioned for each of the different exchanges, there's an Apply Now button. You just pick that and the term that you want to go, and that you can get started. The application process for exchanges usually includes just a couple more items than some of our other ones. For example, NSE does require that you have 3 references. You don't have to do a letter, but there's a form in the application you send to them to do. And I believe the international ones have a couple extra steps as well.
Yes, I think they require 2 recommendations through WKU faculty in particular, who can comment on your academic preparation and your preparation for the different types of things that you'll need to be able to navigate on an exchange program.
Yeah, and that's just because we want to know that you're extra prepared, and also that you have a support system at home too while you're gone. That's really important for us to know about. And once you've applied, like we said, for exchanges, you've already met with us, but we'll continue working with you. Like Catherine said, for international exchanges, there's a process where she nominates you to the host school. With NSE, we have priority applications and then regular applications. So with the priority, it's actually all of the placements for all of the schools and all of the students wanting to do NSE are done at one time. That's usually the beginning of March, and that's when the majority of placements takes place. So you can see we have some deadlines down there. So for NSE, for next spring, fall, or the academic year, February 25th is that deadline. And then all of those placements will be made in March. If you apply after that, that's fine. Just know you want to try to hit the priority to have the best chance of placement. And then you can see the dates for fall or academic year and spring for our international exchanges as well.
Yeah, and those 2 dates listed are kind of the most common, but there are a few variations. So definitely check the page to make sure that you're going to be able to apply in time, because I think the Danish School of Media and Journalism has an earlier one, I think March 1st for the fall. And I think October 1st might still be right for the spring. So they do, some of the partners have late deadlines and some have really early. So there is a lot of variation depending on their processes and how they get students through the application admissions process, and if you have to get a visa or not, because that varies by country. Most of the international exchanges do require you to apply for a student visa, so you need time for that process.
So I'm going to stop sharing, and we're just going to open it up for if you guys have any questions for us about any aspect of doing an exchange or just study abroad in general too, because we can help you with that. You can either turn your camera on, turn your mic on, or if you want to put it in the chat, if you're more comfortable with that, either is totally cool. And don't forget, if you haven't done that sign in, definitely do the sign in.
Since there aren't any questions so far, I can share that I actually did an exchange program in college. It was through a partner university we used to have when I was a student here at WKU. in Vienna, Austria, and it was a very cool experience. The reason why I wanted to study in Austria is because I had some distant relatives on my mom's side there. So I was able to kind of reconnect with some of her cousins and their cousins' children, and made friends with some Austrians that way. But then there were also a lot of different international students at the school I attended. I became good friends with a German student. I hung out with students from Eastern Europe, like Lithuania, where else? Hungary, Poland. And so it was pretty international, even though the school I was at was fairly small. And so I lived in a residence hall that had students that were going to all different universities in Vienna. Had to commute about 45 minutes across the city and the subway, and I had to take like a bus to the subway and then 2 different subway lines and then 1 more bus. It was really cool because I felt like a local, you know, riding on public transportation every day to school, and going in my free time, hanging out in parks, going to cafes. And then I'd travel a little bit as well in Europe. When I was there, I got to go to Italy and the UK, Paris and Madrid. So a lot of our exchange students, especially the ones that go to Europe, travel all around. All right, we have a couple questions.
Yes. So I can answer the first one. In terms of national student exchange, most students live in the dorms, and we recommend, for the most part, that you live on campus, just because you don't want to have to deal with, if you don't have to, like a short-term lease or something like that. And then, Catherine, my guess is for international exchanges, not as many universities abroad have student dorms, but they do have some student housing. You're more than likely to be in an apartment type housing situation with those.
Yeah, like a dorm or a residence hall is most common for international exchanges, but there are a couple partners that offer homestay living experiences. One is Gonzaga University, though I think it's kind of limited. And then our partner in Ecuador. And I believe Mexico also has host families. But yeah, in Europe, it's most common to live in an apartment or maybe a residence hall that isn't tied to a specific university. It's kind of generally student housing where students that might go to different universities in the city live in, and it's not located right next to your campus. So it can kind of vary. Let's see, the next question. What about students, or what about people who are hands-on, especially nursing? Are there hands-on opportunities? Maybe Katie, do you want to address that first? Because I'm sure there's a lot of them in the US for those types of degree programs.
Well, so unfortunately, if you're already in a nursing program, that is the most common program to be closed for exchange students. But if you are leading up to being officially in the program, it is easier to get those classes approved if you go on an exchange with NSC. And that's just because we have a lot of the same accreditations across the United States. But if you're looking for a program like specifically hands-on, I would definitely look into like a short-term option over the summer or winter. There's lots of provider options for that have great opportunities for nursing students. I know Keys has one that goes to Tanzania usually that a lot of nursing students go on. That's Kentucky Institute for International Studies.
Yeah, that's the same with international exchanges. There are not quite as many hands-on opportunities with exchanges, but a few of the schools might be able to connect you with like a service learning experience, volunteer experience. A couple, I think, have internships, but health science programs are really tricky to do a full semester exchange for, so I would recommend short-term programs for that. Trying to think of what other hands-on programs we could talk about. And then the second question, the final question, what programs would you recommend for fashion merchandising majors? NSC is probably the best bet for that. I don't think any of our international partners have fashion merchandising, but you can take culinary credit. So you might, if you're ahead with credits, you brought in transfer credit or dual credit before you started college, then you might be able to work in a semester anyway, even if you can't take major specific classes that semester.
Yeah, there's several campuses with NSC that have a fashion merchandising or a very similar major. I actually had a student who was planning to go this spring to University of Hawaii at Manoa, They have a program. There's one in Buffalo, New York, and there's several others, but that's definitely an option if you're looking into that and want to take major specific classes. But then also, if you've had Dr. Carrie Cox already, she's probably talked about the New York Study Tour program that she does, and that is planning to run this May. You get to go to New York and meet with a whole bunch of people in the fashion industry, which is great. I'm trying to think, they've met with people from Macy's, I think Lululemon. It's all companies that I'm not familiar with, but I know that they're like you would be. But it's a great option, and a lot of students come out of that with some really good contacts. And we also have an alum from the program who works with Pink in New York from Victoria's Secret, so usually you get to meet with her as well.
Cool. Well, Sophie Hayes has joined. She was our student who studied at the University of Lincoln, so we'll let her talk, and I'll see. Do you have the slides where you can share again? Her
I should be able to.
page.
One moment.
And we'll make sure to address you.
I thought this was at 6:30. I don't know why I thought that, so I'm so sorry. I'm late.
No worries, we're still here.
Okay, I'm gonna share the screen with your pictures, Sophie. All right, so everybody should be able to see those pictures now.
I guess, well, as you know, most of these pictures are of the cathedral that's on top of the hill at Lincoln. I went on a tour, I think the last day that I was in Lincoln, and it was not the best weather actually for a roof tour, because it was foggy and rainy and, you know, typical English weather. But it was amazing. I mean, the history of it, and I don't know if they're still doing construction, but they were in the process of I think just restoration. So it was still pretty cool to just go and walk around, and then right across from the cathedral is the castle. And I didn't get to go. I didn't, for some reason, have enough time. But definitely when I go back, I'll visit it. But I mean, I walked around it like all the time. And then you probably can guess from just what's on the side of it. That's the campus library, and that's where I spent most of my time just studying. It was really nice. I wouldn't say the most resourceful, but it's still growing. It's a small campus. I think they opened like 20 years ago, so they're still obviously expanding and on with their university. And then that hallway, that was just from where I lived when I was abroad. I was on the top of the hill that's referred to as just, I guess, uphill, which is more, I guess, historic homes. It was right beside a like these little groups of like schools, like it was like a private school, so like one building was for like a certain age group, and then another. But it was a really quiet street, and it was right across from like the park, so that was really cool.
Okay, can you share a little bit? Oh, sorry.
No, we had the same question, I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, can you share a little bit about how you chose the University of Lincoln as the destination that you wanted to go to, and what the process was like applying for it?
Yeah. I knew I've always wanted to study abroad. When I was in high school, I knew that was just a really big thing that I wanted to do. I remember going to a tour at Western and asking about their study abroad program. And I originally, in the spring, had switched from accounting to, I think, German with a minor in international business. So when I contacted Krista, I really wanted to do something in Germany, and then took some German classes, and I was like, I don't know. And I had mentioned that I had been to England before when back in like 2009, and she recommended Lincoln as opposed to Harlexton.
Cool.
The application process, it was simple to get in, as there were other students from Lincoln interested in coming here. And it all depends on just like if you have the right number from each university. So like if 2 people from Western wanted to go to Lincoln, there had to be 2 people from Lincoln who wanted to go to Western as well, because you swap the amount of people. So luckily, I was able to go. I think the most difficult part was getting colony classes. Since it was an exchange, it doesn't have a lot of courses, I think, already, I guess, vouched for.
Pre-approved,
Yeah, so I had to figure out, which colony courses were equivalent or ones that could replace, ones, here. And I mean, to be honest, I only got one course approved, so I only got like that 1 credit, but I mean, I enjoyed the other 3. So, I mean, I think to me, and I also had some other credits like already under my belt, so it didn't matter as much to get all of the classes credited for.
What would you say were some of the highlights of your exchange experience?
Oh, I think kind of it was very independent. I felt very, I guess, free, to do whatever I really wanted to. Like, if I wanted to go, to Paris for a weekend, I could do it, and I did it. And I could, figure out like my schedule and, arrange plans and all the stuff that I needed. I think the freedom to do kind of whatever, I wanted, and also just like, just the immersion, I don't think I ate any fast food. I try to just stay local, and by doing that, I just got way more out of my trip abroad.
Awesome. And do you have any special tips you would give students who are looking to go on exchange programs?
I had I think like kind of towards like the middle-ish of my trip, my mom arranged for me to have a Capital One credit card, and they don't take any like extra fees if you use it internationally. So like that's the best credit card to use, because you will be using, unless you want to like have currency from wherever you go, which is also kind of fun. Definitely having a Capital One credit card was very helpful.
And do you have any tips for like, making friends with students? Because that can be a bit of a challenge when you're on a program like that, where you're having to be more proactive. Like, did you get involved in certain activities on campus or in the community to meet?
I did look at some of the clubs. They call them societies over there, which is kind of fancy. I looked at some, and I was, to be honest, I was just lazy and didn't go to any of the meetings, because like you do have to like pay after like a couple of like sessions, which I was like, I don't know if I want to do that. But I'm quite an extroverted introvert. If I see someone I think looks cool, I just kind of go up to them, and it's really easy to catch someone's attention with like a different accent, and it's a good gateway into, you know, just a conversation and just kind of hitting it off, you know, because you're like, oh, like, where are you from? You're not from around here. And you're like, oh, I'm from, you know, I'm from Kentucky, blah, blah. And they always say, oh, KFC. And you go, no, bourbon and horses. That's always the thing. And also, if you go over there, a fun thing you can do is convince them that you're related to Colonel Sanders, if you want to do that. But, you know, some of my really close friends, I just went up to them after class and I just said, hey, you know, like, what are you guys doing after this? They're like, oh, we're going to Swan, which is the on-campus pub. But it is, for some people, really hard to make friends. But overall, your accent will help you get into a lot of places, for sure.
And my final question is, how do you feel like your experience on the exchange program impacted you? Get out of it.
I feel like I can do anything now. Whenever I talk to Krista, just kind of venting my frustrations about the whole just credit process, because it was, you know, a lot of back and forth of like, oh, we don't do things like that over here, and, you know, like, they don't have like a catalog of all of their courses, so it was really difficult to try to figure out which courses matched on either side of the university. She said, you know, after that, like, you will feel like you're able to do anything, and, you know, from getting courses, you know, the credits for those, and having to, you know, run around Western, you know, getting approvals from certain people, and, you know, waiting, and, you know, figuring out the time zones, and then also, you know, what to do if your flight gets canceled, you know, 2 weeks before you go because of a strike from the pilots, or, you know, what to do if you are, you know, in Europe and you don't have like certain things to get back to England, and figuring out visas, and just like such tedious tasks. You kind of feel like once you're there, you know, you've got everything figured out, and you kind of feel more grown up. So coming back here, you know, I feel definitely very travel savvy. Like, oh, if I want to go to, you know, definitely not Florida, but just as an example, if I wanted to go to Florida, like, I could go to Florida if I wanted to. I can arrange that, because going to Florida, which is 6 hours away, that's just so easy. All I have to do is just drive, you know. I'm not hopping trains and figuring out, you know, where to get service for Wi-Fi, and, you know. So yeah, I feel definitely more prepared to take on the world.
That's a great point. I think a lot of students say that when they study abroad, and probably studying away too on a program like NSE. You just build a lot of confidence because you do things that you didn't know you could do because it was just the unknown, and you're in a different culture and you're trying to figure things out. So I'm glad you commented on that. If anyone has questions for Sophie, put them in the chat, but I'll go ahead and address a couple of the questions that came in before Sophie got on. Lauren asked, what programs would you recommend for people interested in international law? Amongst the exchange partners, I can think of our partner in Lyon, France, Jean Moulin Lyon. I remember they have at least a couple law courses, like for undergraduate students. I believe possibly our partner in Taiwan does, and I bet either University of Lincoln or University of East Anglia would have something like that, but I can't say for sure. I haven't checked on law specifically, but that's something you can browse around the different international exchange programs and look. We have fields listed. Now, we don't always capture all of the fields, so I would check the ones that seem to have a lot of academic areas, like the 2 programs in England, because that's English speaking, and just look on the university website. University of East Anglia lets our students enroll in almost anything. The University of Lincoln is a little more limited, I believe. Sophie, did you have to only choose amongst a few different colleges or departments or faculties there?
Yes, I think there was journalism, photography, history, and then I think maybe one STEM major. I'm an accounting major, and that wasn't offered, but I know a lot of business majors go in the spring.
Yeah, accounting. So that was the next question. Accounting is a really tricky one to do on study abroad because of our special credit accreditation with AACSB. And there's only a few schools internationally that have the accounting accreditation. So the accounting department is not comfortable approving much of anything, or can't, because of our accreditation. So if you're an accounting major, I think you have like one elective. So you could save that one elective for study abroad, right? And you said you're accounting. Sophie, did you?
Yeah, I think there was one in, I think, Germany, that was a business school that I think had a couple of accounting, like some basic accounting courses
And
offered.
there's one in France, but I don't know if the actual accounting classes can transfer. Now, outside of exchanges, if you're looking at international programs, I believe there's a few schools in New Zealand and Australia that might have the same accreditation. So it would be possible to go there and take accounting courses, but you would have to get them pre-approved. Katie, do you have any recommendations for those two, like law or accounting?
For law, almost, I don't want to say almost all, but a good number of the NSE schools have pre-law programs that you can, I'm sure, find classes that fit into what you need for your major here, as well as international affairs and things like that. So you can find the classes that you need. With accounting, I actually had a student go last year to University of Colorado, Colorado Springs for accounting. He went for the whole year, usually switched his major in the middle of that, but he was able to get, for the fall semester, several accounting classes approved by the department here at Western. And there are some other schools within NSC that have accounting and that are open to exchange students as well. And you just really want to work closely with your department to make sure that they're okay with the classes, and especially with the accreditations, because they'll know right away, especially with NSC schools in the US, if they have the right accreditations.
Yeah, getting credit approvals for study abroad and exchanges can be tricky, like Sophie said. And I just want to clarify that all of the credit transfers as long as the school is accredited, but it doesn't transfer something specific until you get a department head to approve an equivalent or a substitution for your major or minor. So that's what Sophie was referring to, having to go around to departments and have them review syllabi and confirm if it can count as colon A. Colon A can be tricky just because it has to be a direct equivalent to count as colon A. They won't just count it toward the category if it's something that isn't at all similar to one of the approved colon A courses. Students, so there's a database where students can look up, where you all can look up what has been pre-approved in the past. And so for partners that we've had for a long time, there's a lot in there, like Yonsei, Kansai Gaidai, some of the ones in Europe. Ecuador has quite a few, but like our new partners like University of Lincoln, there's not much in there because it's just based on what students have gotten approved before. And then, you know, for students that are business majors, especially accounting, you can look up schools on the accreditation website, AACSB, and that's where you can try to look around and see if there's any international schools that might be able to like have credit that you could transfer for your major. Any other questions for any of us about exchanges, study abroad, Sophie's experience?
I hear a chicken.
Yeah, that's Betty. She's making, she's making like egg laying noises. And it's really weird because it's like very late. To be laying an egg, and she's, I don't know. So I keep watching to see if she's gonna lay an
You better
egg.
go check on her if you think she has an issue. So if there's no other questions, we really thank you all for joining us and for your attention. And we're happy to answer any questions personally if you want to stick around, or if you want to email us. We can also put you in touch with Sophie. We can get you her contact info. We also have a couple other ambassadors, I believe, who did exchanges. There's one who studied at Kansai Gaidai. I'm sure he'd be happy to share all about his experience in Japan. And then one thing I forgot to mention is usually when students are in the application process for an international exchange, I will put them in touch with a student who's been recently, because it's really helpful to talk to someone who's gone that can give you tips for looking for housing or what to bring, you know, how to deal with communication and money and all of that. All right, well, thank you all and have a good evening.
Yes, thank you.